Khaled was a harsh man, devoid of mercy. He treated his son, Mohammed, with inexplicable cruelty. He forbade him from playing with other children and yelled at him whenever he tried to leave the house. Mohammed watched the children outside having fun, but he remained trapped within walls of cruelty and deprivation. He never understood why his father treated him this way, but he had learned to fear his angry voice. Khaled would return home with a frown, looking for any excuse to unleash his anger on his son. He scolded him over trivial matters, and when he found no reason, he invented one. Mohammed lived in constant fear, avoiding his father's gaze to escape his wrath. His mother tried to comfort him, but she was powerless against her domineering husband. Whenever she attempted to speak gently to Khaled, he would shout at her to stay out of it, sometimes even raising his hand against her if she defended their son. She cried silently, wiping Mohammed's tears without letting Khaled see. The boy would go to sleep, wishing he had a father like other children. He had never known warmth from his father. The only love he felt came from his mother's eyes, but she was too weak to protect him from Khaled's tyranny. Every time he heard his father's footsteps approaching, his body trembled with fear. He wished to be invisible, to disappear from the house where he never felt safe. Sometimes his mother hid him when Khaled's rage was at its worst, but he always found a way to reach him. Mohammed's cries echoed through the house, but no one outside could hear them. Khaled believed that cruelty made men strong, and never thought that love could build resilience. As Mohammed grew older, his sense of injustice deepened, but he lacked the strength to resist. He watched other children speak proudly of their fathers and longed for a loving parent. The nights were long and dark, and his only companion was his silent tears. He avoided speaking in front of his father, afraid of giving him another reason to be angry. He hated his father's voice, his cruelty, and every moment spent in his presence. He dreamed of running away, but had no idea where to go. Each morning, he woke up to the same painful reality, with no choice but to endure. His mother tried to give him love, but it was a drop in the ocean of cruelty he drowned in. He felt like his life was different from everyone else's, as if he were merely a shadow in a home devoid of warmth. Years passed, and the wounds in his heart were deeper than any physical scars. He rarely spoke, but inside him were screams he could never voice. He tried to appear strong, but inside he was fragile. Khaled saw his son's weakness and took pleasure in breaking him further. He saw the tears in his wife's eyes, but did nothing. Each night felt endless, and each morning brought new suffering. Mohammed felt trapped in a life of fear and loneliness, desperate to escape but unsure how. He longed to scream, to speak out, but his voice remained locked inside him. Days passed, yet he felt like he was imprisoned within them. One night, he could take no more. He decided to leave the house, not knowing where he would go. He walked aimlessly, feeling the cold and hunger, but he was determined never to return. After hours of wandering, he found a large tree and sat beneath it to rest. The sky was full of stars, but they brought him no comfort. He thought about his future, but had no answers. Exhaustion overtook him, and he closed his eyes, trying to sleep. In the morning, a wealthy man passed by in his luxurious carriage. He stopped, got out, and approached Mohammed. "What are you doing here alone?" he asked. Mohammed looked up with tired eyes, unsure how to respond. The man saw the exhaustion and sorrow in his face. Sitting beside him, he gently asked if he had a home to return to. Mohammed sensed something different about this man. His voice lacked the cruelty he was used to. After a moment of hesitation, he began to speak, telling his story, his father's cruelty, the suffering he had endured, and how he was always robbed of happiness. The man listened intently, his heart aching for the boy. He had a grand palace, but had never been blessed with children, and despite his wealth, he often felt lonely. When Mohammed finished speaking, the man looked at him and said, "No child should live this way. Come with me, and I will take care of you." At first, Mohammed hesitated, But he had no other option. He climbed into the carriage, unsure of what lay ahead, but the man's gentle words made him feel a sliver of hope. When they arrived at the palace, Mohammed saw the grand gates and the servants waiting respectfully. They looked at him curiously. The man turned to them and said, "Take care of this boy. He is part of the family now." Mohammed couldn't believe what he was hearing. He had never felt wanted before. He was taken to bathe, and for the first time, he felt warm water against his skin. Afterward, he put on new clothes and hardly recognized himself. At the dining table, he saw dishes he had never dreamed of. He sat hesitantly, but the man encouraged him to eat. Slowly, he took his first bites, savoring the taste of real food. The man watched him with a warm smile, happy that he could help. When they finished, the man assured him, "This is your home now. You will never have to live in fear again." Days passed, and Mohammed's life changed completely. He learned to read and write, played freely in the gardens, and felt like he had been reborn. He no longer knew the pain of deprivation. He had friends and a future. The man taught him how to be strong without cruelty, showing him that life was not always unfair. As Mohammed grew older, he never forgot his mother. From a distance, he ensured she was safe and sent her money in secret. However, he never had the courage to face his father again. Years passed, and the wealthy man grew old and weak. Mohammed cared for him as he once cared for him. One day, the man called him close, held his hand, and said, "You have been the son I never had." Mohammed felt a deep pain in his heart, realizing that this man had been more of a father to him than his own. With a trembling voice, the man continued, "I have decided to leave everything to you. You are the only one I trust." Mohammed tried to refuse, but he saw the determination in the man's eyes. A few days later, the man's health worsened until he took his final breath. Mohammed stood by his grave, his heart filled with gratitude and sorrow. He inherited everything, but wealth brought him no joy. He resolved to honor the man's legacy, making sure his kindness lived on. Despite everything, he could not forget his father. After much thought, he decided to return home. As he neared the house, his heart pounded. He knocked on the door. His mother opened it, froze in shock, then pulled him into a tearful embrace. Then he saw his father. The anger that once filled Khalid's eyes was gone, replaced by a mixture of shock and regret. Mohammed held his father's hand and began telling him everything. Khalid listened silently, his eyes brimming with tears. When he finished, Mohammed said softly, "I want you both to come with me." Khalid never imagined that the son he had wronged would return to take him in. Mohammed brought his parents to the palace, beginning a new life together, one filled with peace and forgiveness.